Welcome to the fourth full day of the Canadian federal election campaign. Today was a bit of a weird one. If you're new here, I was a journalist in the Parliamentary Press Gallery for like 7 years, so I know a lot about politics and I'm covering this election. So today could have been a normal campaign day, but again, Donald Trump happened. To be precise, on Wednesday, Trump signed an executive order, he really loves those, huh? For 25% tariffs on all foreign-made cars and light trucks, in addition to tariffs already in place on those goods. They're supposed to go into effect April 2nd and won't apply to US-made parts in foreign-made vehicles. But who knows if that'll still be accurate in like an hour, because Trump loves to change his mind, right? Anyways, that whole kerfuffle meant that Mark Carney had to kind of take off his Liberal leader hat and put on his Prime Minister hat, and he headed back to Ottawa, where today he met with his cabinet and they talked about these new tariff threats and how to handle them. And he held a press conference where he actually, I think, came across pretty well. His comments were being really well received on social media, but we'll get to that in just a second. Because Pierre Poilievre did do an announcement today, despite all of the other news that was kind of drowning things out. He laid out a proposal to allow Canadians to contribute an extra $5,000 per year to our TFSAs, if that cash is invested in Canadian companies. Can't wait to invest my extra $5,000 that I totally have per year to put in savings, right? But Poilievre, who was speaking before Carney, also had a message for Donald Trump in the wake of the tariffs. Here's what he had to say.
Here he goes again, attacking his closest neighbor and America's best friend, with new tariffs that will drive up the cost of living for American consumers and drive down American wages, while damaging a historic friendship, the best trading relationship in the world. My message to President Trump is knock it off. Stop attacking America's friends. Start trading so that we can once again become richer, stronger, and more secure on both sides of the border.
That's right, knock it off. In his remarks, Poilievre also did something that he did yesterday too, so it's becoming a bit of a pattern, where he talked about that whole Bermuda Brookfield tax story that ended up being less of an issue than we actually thought it was initially. You can watch yesterday's video for more on that. But when speaking about this today, Poilievre said Carney, quote, moved his corporate assets to Bermuda, a tax haven, to avoid paying his fair share. Quote, globalist elites like him can always escape the bill. That language could really easily lead someone to believe that Carney didn't pay his own taxes and used an offshore tax haven for his own purposes, and that is not true. And as we learned yesterday, the taxes were paid on those funds, which were mostly pension funds for like retirees and stuff. But Carney parked them in Bermuda as the person overseeing these investment funds for Brookfield because he wanted to avoid double taxation. It's technically legal. You can definitely debate the ethics of using a tax haven even in this case. But what we do know is that what Poilievre seemed to be trying real hard to imply is not accurate. His team also put out this conspiracy theory again, saying this is not a conspiracy theory, which trying to claim that Carney's real agenda is to have the Canadian population hit 100 million people by 2100. Now, Carney does have an advisor who does support this initiative called the Century Initiative. But that doesn't mean Carney himself supports it. In fact, Carney has come out and promised to keep existing immigration caps in place. So, super ethical tactics here. All right, that was Poilievre's piece today. Now back to Mark Carney. He was speaking to reporters and he confirmed that he's going to be chatting with Trump in the next day or two. And he didn't share how Canada plans to respond if the US tariffs do in fact come into effect next week, saying he doesn't want to tip his hand in this negotiation. But he also said some pretty heavy stuff about our relationship with the US that is a bit scary, but it's also kind of what we all already knew was going on. Specifically, he said our old relationship with the US is over.
Over the coming weeks, months, and years, we must fundamentally reimagine our economy. We will need to ensure that Canada can succeed in a drastically different world. The old relationship we had with the United States, based on deepening integration of our economies and tight security and military cooperation, is over. What exactly the United States does next is unclear. But what is clear is that we, as Canadians, have agency. We have power. We are masters in our own home. Nous sommes maîtres chez nous.
Carney also said that the road ahead is not going to be easy, but he also assured us that we can do it.
To my fellow Canadians, I don't want to set unreasonable expectations. The road ahead will be long. There is no silver bullet. There is no quick fix. And I know and I understand that many are feeling anxious and worried about the future. Fundamental change is always unsettling. But I have every confidence in our country because I understand what President Trump does not. That we love Canada with every fiber of our being. Because we are stronger when we are together, and Canadians are uniting as never before.
Lastly, he sort of politely but firmly slapped down Donald Trump's threats when it comes to Canada working with Europe.
We choose our own allies in Canada. We choose how we engage those allies. We are sovereign. So I take note of the President's comment. I don't take direction from it.
I'm excited to hear how that phone call goes. So yeah, that is what happened in this very weird fourth full day of the election campaign because we live in very weird times. And it's kind of a worst case scenario for Poilievre because according to all the polling, he does a lot better when Canadians care about affordability issues as their top priority, but the Trump stuff, Mark Carney does way better on. So the fact that we're all talking about Trump right now, Poilievre's gotta be unhappy with that. And I bet you he's gonna try to pull the conversation back to affordability. See you tomorrow, but until then, what do you think of all this?